Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for being here and welcome if it is your first time. I appreciate you. If you have not gone over to the Farming Without the Bank podcast, I am going to encourage you to do that because we're always going to have different podcasts. So go ahead, go to that one. That is not always about farming. Okay. All right. Today, let's talk about doing things together equals success. I recently, you guys, I talked about it on my podcast a couple weeks ago that I'm taking this mastermind class for short-term rentals. And it's so good. I am really, really enjoying it from Vodacy, Sean Moore's class. But what I want to, and he talks about all the time in there that when a husband and wife are doing if they have a short-term rental, if they're taking the course, if they're participating in it together, there is always going to be more success in that. And, a lot of what Sean says, I agree with because I see it and I basically repeat the exact same thing to my clients. And I see the same thing in the infinite banking concept. And I see the same thing with money. If you have a married couple or a dating couple or whatever, I don't frankly care. If you are a couple and you are doing things together and you are on the same page, at least understanding things, you are always going to be more successful than if you are completely separated and one is taking the lead on it. And, it's not that we are not successful in our household, but my husband tends to just let me do things because he has to think about things longer. He doesn't have all the same interests that I have. Okay. If I wanted to talk about hunting and fishing all day long, we would all be on the same page, but I don't. I care about what he's doing for hunting and fishing, but I really don't care about what lure he's using. I don't care about how deep he's fishing. I don't care about what, the weight of the line is, what rod he's using, what system he's buying for the boat or the Willcraft or the whatever he's got going on for ice fishing. Like, I am just not super interested in that. But he then is not super interested in some of my stuff. With that being said, sometimes I sit back, even for ourselves, and I go, gosh, you know how many short-term rentals we could have? You know how much farm ground we could have? You know how many long-term rentals we could have? You know how much better we could be if we did it together? Because I have somebody helping, right? But that other person has to be interested. So what I watch couples, and I see the same thing that Sean is talking about in his trainings, and he talks about it on his podcasts, is that if couples can get together and they can do things and they can talk about things together, then they are going to have more success. Now, my husband does not hold me back from anything, and I've talked about this before, but I see it a lot that one couple will say, nope, you can't do this. And one of the people inside the house will say, nope, you're not doing that. And another one wants to take the step, right? And even with their life insurance policy, I just had someone the other day that I reached out and said, are we doing something or are we not moving forward? Because his wife is not on board and she was not in the meeting. So it's really hard when you have somebody not participating, telling you what you should or shouldn't do. And so as you're going through the IBC stuff, as you're going through any kind of business, I don't care if you have a business and your spouse is not on board with that business, it's going to be very hard for you to be successful because they need to be supportive. My husband is very supportive of whatever it is that I want to do. He is just like, okay, whatever, doesn't matter to me, but he is 100% going to support me and pick up everything that I'm dropping off on the back end because I'm not able to do it because I'm doing all these other things. And he understands why we're doing that. Some don't. Some it's just very separate. If you want to buy rental properties, then you go buy rental properties and I'm not helping you with that. I'm not taking the course. Don't talk to me about it, right? That's not going to be successful. That is going to be an uphill battle the entire way. And I just noticed this a lot when we're talking to people, when I'm talking to people about infinite banking. One of them understands it, the other one thinks it's just an absolute scam. And I had a fantastic couple this week who they listened to everything together. And it was so funny because she said, this is basically all we've talked about for the last 3 to 4 months is infinite banking. We read the book and every single day we are consumed with it. They're listening to podcasts. She's read 5 books, not just my book. She went ahead and read all the other books that I recommend. And so she's got Becoming Your Own Banker. She's got Warehouse of Wealth. She's got both of mine. I think she read How Privatized Banking Really Works. Maybe that was one of them. Anyway, they engulfed themselves in it and they're talking about it themselves. And so they had questions together. They had things that they hadn't, one may have been listening to this podcast and one a different podcast, and then they came back and talked about it. And it's just so interesting when you really look at people and couples that are maybe a little more successful than the next one. It's because they have a supportive spouse or a spouse that very much is engulfed in what the other one is doing, right? They're doing it together. And so it's just something to chew on a little bit. This isn't going to be a super long podcast because there's nothing more really to say about that. But if you are going to have a business, the success rate of businesses is so low anyway as business owners. If you don't have somebody that's beside you, cheering you on and helping you out, the chance of that business surviving is very, very nil. Nobody needs to come home and be yelled at because of, their business, or yelled at because somebody doesn't think they're making enough money yet. And so if that other person is not engaged with you, how are you supposed to really be successful? Because you've got this uphill battle. You could do that all on your own. If you've got a partner, they should be a partner. So this has ended up being a little bit of marriage advice, but I'm an unlicensed counselor. Don't come after me. I just really like to watch people, and I see that, and I find it very interesting that it doesn't matter if it's myself talking about it, if it's Sean Moore talking about it, if it's, Dave Ramsey talking about it. I've heard him say the same thing. You have to be on the same page. And so if you're not on the same page, there needs to probably have a conversation happen. There are some times where you have to just trust that somebody is right. And it could be the somebody that says, hey, you need to pull back a little bit. My husband will pull me back into reality because I can see an opportunity in just about absolutely anything you tell me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be such a great opportunity. Everybody's going to love that. Why wouldn't they love that? Right? Everything in my brain is an opportunity. And yet not all of those things are really, truly going to work. And so sometimes he'll have to remind me to come back down to reality. And then there are times where I am having to remind him to get out of his safety zone and go, hey, what's the worst case scenario? What is the absolute worst case scenario? If we bought a life insurance policy, for example, what is the absolute worst case scenario? You cancel the policy and they give you your cash value. A lot of people ask that question, well, what happens if I want to get out? Well, you cancel the policy and whatever the cash value is what you get. In that, if you have a loan, it's cash value minus the loan. And so you're not out absolutely everything, right? You don't want to do that in the early years because you're not going to get it all. But what truly is the risk? What are the upsides? If we want to buy a property, I'm like, what's the risk? We sell it? Like, we could possibly take a loss on it if we bought stupid, but ideally we're not buying stupid. And so we could get out and break even, worst case scenario, or get out and lose a little bit of money, but a property's never going to be worth absolutely nothing. Even if it burns down, you should have insurance on it. So you have to balance those two things so that you can make this decision. But if we're not both educating ourselves, if we're not both on board, but one of us is pulling us back, how are you going to be successful? Try to be on board together with everything so that you can be more successful. If you're running a business, your spouse should know what the numbers are. You should know, what did you make? What was your net income? What was your gross income? Where did your expenses go? Understand how taxes are filed. All of those things need to be looked at so that we can make better judgments going forward with our business. So it doesn't matter if it's infinite banking or finances or it's the business. Do it together. All right, guys, that's all I got today. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And if you need anything, you just let me know. Mary Jo at withoutthebank.com. Talk to you in the next podcast.